Hi, welcome to my latest video. Well, this is part 3 of my new server build, this application server that'll be used to run a whole slew of VMs for my home/office network. And in this particular one, we're going to take what I put together here on the desktop and I'm going to place it inside of its case. So it's just as I left it at the end of the last video, and what I'll do is I will start disassembling it and then see where we go from there in terms of getting everything to work inside the selected case, the Corsair Air 540 case that I showed in the very first part of this series. So let's get started with this and see how it goes. Stick around to the end and you'll see it performing several tests, including a graphics test. Okay, it's all turned off now. I've decided I'm going to remove the cooler. I'll have to clean all the thermal paste off of it, both the pump itself and the CPU, but that's okay. It'll be the safest way for me to get it into the case. And I can twist it the way I want and slide it. I like to slide it off. Now at this point, better make sure you have plenty of isopropyl alcohol. I prefer 99%. It's the most pure and will leave the less chance of you leaking water onto the motherboard. That's the main reason for using that. And I have a stack of paper towels which work fine. So I'll take a paper towel, isopropyl alcohol. I will do the CPU first. And the way to do this is push in towards the center to clean this off, right? So push in from the edges, switching your finger around on the thermal paste as you do it in order to get this all out. Just get it all off. You can see it's coming in the paper. We can flip it open. There's still good stuff on the other side. We're going to wind up polishing this pretty thoroughly. But let's get the bulk of it. Try to avoid it going off the edges. That's why I pushed in towards the center from the edges as much as I could. Always make sure you close your alcohol again so it doesn't dry up, especially 99 will evaporate fast. But now what I want to do is I'm going to clean the pump while I can. Because again, you don't want this stuff lingering on these devices, whether it's the CPU or the pump, because it'll just cause a mess if you bump it into something. And as we can see, there's a lot here. Again, towards the center, not towards the edges, and get all of that up. And again, we're going to clean this again before I put new thermal paste and put it back on. It's actually starting to harden a little bit already. I guess my testing with the heat actually did have an impact on it. And I think I got enough there. I see shine, a little bit on the edges. That's good enough for now. And like I said, I'll clean it again before I put it back on. So now all the pieces are to the level that I want in order to put it into the case. So we'll proceed to the case installation now. Okay, here's the case. Get the side panel off and put it somewhere safe. Now I need to take all the fans out of this because all fans are being replaced. So we have 2 in the front and we have 1 in the back. So let me take the top and front panel off first. Looks like it has a little screen, magnetically held screen here, right? So each one of these 2 fans has 4 screws holding it in. Okay, the 3 fans are out. So now, let's lay it down this way so I can get the motherboard in, okay? As you can see, I got to put the I/O shield in here first, and then I'll put the motherboard in here. It has really only 8 screws, but I'm only going to be using, unfortunately, 6 of them. I'll leave these 3 studs here, right? There's no reason to take them out. But the motherboard that I'm putting in here is a little too short. So the other ones I believe are all in the right spot. Let me do a test on that. Bring the motherboard over, take a look at it, make sure it does indeed fit, and it'll go like this. So in terms of the actual screws, these end ones it does not reach, but it should reach the others. So if I hold it by the heat sinks, that should be pretty close. Let's see, right there. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But this one here in the middle is not a, there's no screw there. So it'll be actually one less. This thing here is what Corsair likes to do. They put a little stud sticking up as an alignment. So we got to get that screw hole into that. So we'll come down in like this, and then I got to line up all the screws, and in particular this little stud. It's actually sticking through right now. So this shows me that we do line up. Okay, I'll put a little more light on this matter so you can see a little bit better. A lot of shiny spots here, but that little stud is sticking up through here, so we're good. We're going to have a lot of room at the top and a lot of room over here. So this is in the actual motherboard compartment. This thing is pretty roomy. I won't put this fan back on, the RGB one, until the motherboard is secured. And the specific screws that the case came with for the motherboard are these. They have to match the studs in terms of threading, and these are the ones that do it. So let me take the motherboard back out, put it on the side here. Let me get the I/O shield and put that in. So here's the I/O shield that came with the motherboard. And the way it's going to go, the way the motherboard is, you always got to look at the motherboard first. You will see the I/O connectors. So it's going to have to go like this to match the connectors. Generally, the antennas and the audio are the lower part. So that's usually pretty good to be pretty standard. Put this over here. The I/O shield has to go this way then. We're going to tilt it a little bit. And I got to push it in here. These are sometimes quite tricky to get in, but as long as you start in the corners and sort of push it, you'll actually hear it snap in. A little bit challenging, don't worry. Try to line it up and then push two ends at a time. There we go, you hear a click. There and there. All four corners are through now. So if I look at the end here, it's staying in position and all four corners are pushed through and clicked. Make sure that none of these little tongues here can get in the way of the motherboard connectors. And you'll see that once I put the motherboard in. So let's be very careful. Let's take the motherboard and let's sort of tilt it in like this, getting it to line up with the I/O shield and all of this threaded slugs. And in particular, this one right here that has to come through and show its face, okay? Okay, so sort of line that up like that. Put it in like a little bit of an angle, about 20 degrees that way, until it comes in place, and then make sure that this guy clicks in. There'll be a little bit of tension involved, but you can get it in there. Those screws line up. That screw lines up. And this one should just, there we go. It pushed through right there. That's the one that you synchronize with right there. And now the motherboard is in position. Let me put one screw in, and then we will see what it looks like. Just to hold it in place, I will put one screw in. Now there's only 5 of them, so I'll pick this one way over here at the top. I'm not using electric screwdrivers for this. That should hold it in place. Now we need to double check to make sure none of those fingers are falling into any of the connectors. Okay, that all the connectors are free, that there's nothing blocking the opening of the connectors here. And you look across the board, because that's providing the ground from the motherboard to the I/O shield. So it looks like it's pretty good. I don't see any fingers in the way. They cause the thing to swell out a little bit, but it still looks good. So now I can finish off the screws. It helps to have a magnetic screwdriver. And I will top, bottom, and I'll go catty corner with it. Don't tighten all the way down, just enough to hold them snug initially. This one back here needs a 12-volt external power, a little bit offset from the back. Now if it makes you feel better, although there's no need to, you could take that stud one out and put a regular threaded offset it in there if you like. But I'm not going to do that. The motherboard is now in. Now the next big thing is going to be the water cooler, the all-in-one water cooler. So this is already assembled, we just need to get it in place. I'm going to put the hoses at the top. Now the screws for this, for the radiator is going to be screwed with these screw holes there's 12 of them, right, to the front of the case. So it's going to go in just like that. Try to be careful with the pump. Make sure that you don't let it slam into the motherboard. Let me take mine, for example, and I'll push it through here just to hold it in place right through where the fan would be. Now I have it pretty much in position. I already accounted for the fact that I wanted the wires down, so they're all ready to go through these grommets. So all I really have to do at this point is secure it to the front. Now it's important, this is very important, to keep the top of the hoses toward the top of the case. So I'm mounting it vertically. Right now I'm holding it flat, but when I pick it up, this is going to be the top of the radiator. And by doing it this way, I'll be able to easily fit the pump in the right position down onto the CPU. So the thing to do now is to secure the radiator, this part here on the other side of the fans, to the front of the case. So I need to go into the package that came with the all-in-one cooler for the radiator, and I need to find the correct screws. Okay, I found the screws. They were in with a package within the all-in-one cooler. This is one of them. I'll put it on my screwdriver. We'll do a double check. I will take this and I will try one of them. Come in here, screw these in cleanly without any snagging whatsoever. And it looks like it does fine. So those are the screws. I have more than enough. I need 12 of them, right? 4 times 3. And now I need to position this up in the front here. Again, be careful with the pump. I'll put one screw in to start, just to get it in position. And then we will turn it upright to get to the rest. Actually, I would put 2 in, because it's kind of big. 360 millimeters, right? So let me see if I can get a couple of them in here. At least started. They don't have to be permanent yet. I got to be careful of the pump. And now we have access to the remaining screws. Notice what I'm doing here is I'm turning it by the shaft. Makes it a little easier sometimes to control it because you get a little closer to the screw. And we're in. Now if I took my filter that came with this, the magnetic filter, it should just click right into place like this. So we're good. Well, I guess I could leave that for now. It doesn't really matter. Okay, it should stay in place. Be careful here with the pump. Again, make sure it doesn't cause a problem and bounce back and hit something important on the motherboard. Clean this off again and put the cooler back onto the CPU. Sounds like that's a good thing to do at this point. Okay, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I need to clean this thing one more time. The CPU and the pump. The platen on the pump. That's what I refer to that as from the old days. So I put some alcohol on here. Always make sure you seal it back up again, first thing. And then I'll take this and I'll give it a nice little polishing here. And I'll do the same thing to the pump. Take the pump out of this little secure area I had done for it. Get it out and get it polished one more time. But I think that's good enough. It looks pretty clean. I need to put the bracket on the other side. Now the way I'm going to do that is I have some masking tape, some yellow masking tape. So I'm going to reach through here and I'm going to put, I may not be able to reach. I may have to take the other side off in order to get to it. Take the other side panel off here. I'll put this on from the other side. Doesn't seem to be any particular orientation. So what I'll do is I'll push it through. Oh, I'm gonna have to remove this, okay? So this cage here, this is used for the 2.5 inch drives. There we go, I had to get that out of there. I'll put it back later or save it on the side for now. And then I'll take this and I'll push it through. I'll put Intel to the top. We get it through here. Now I could put the cage back, but I won't. What I'll do instead is I'll take a piece of this masking tape and I'll take this and I'll secure it. That will not harm anything. And it'll hold it in place while I put the other part of the cooler on. Like that. That way it won't fall out. Now I can go to the other side again. Everything is still clean, nothing touched anything unusual. So the first thing I got to do is put these little plastic pieces on. They only go one way, so I have to make sure they go all the way down. I think this big opening has to go down, as I recall from the test run. Tapes, that's the wrong way, I guess. There we go. Have to go all the way down. Looks like it's starting to push from the other side a little bit. So I may have to re-secure this back here. I may have to reach my hand on the other side when I do it. Now let's go ahead and put the thermal paste on. So we'll put the thermal paste on. Right now I have Arctic MX4, very popular one that has good ratings to it. The cap off, not the first time I used it. And now I'm going to try to do a decent positioned X right across the center part of it. And I'll close it up. Following modern techniques, I will now spread it out. So I'll take it and start spreading it onto the CPU. Trying to keep it on top of the CPU at all times. It does not have to be perfect. But this way, if there's any excess, I can make sure I get rid of it. Like this one definitely has some excess. So I'll wipe that off. And then I will proceed to smooth it out best I can. That's pretty good. Now when I put the pump on, in this case, it could be a regular cooler too, it will smooth it out even more as it presses it in place. And there's not a lot of excess there, so it shouldn't spread too much to the sides. Now I'll take the pump, put it in position. Get started with my fingers on these spring-loaded screws. Push them down a little bit, all the way around. Do diagonal for the same reasons. Distribute the mechanical error on it. Before I go too tighten with it, I will turn the whole thing over. And I will remove the tape that I put before, making sure it doesn't get snagged underneath anything. We have it secured in place. Go back over again. Now there is a tear here. I'm going to make sure I do the tear later on. But for now, let me just tighten it up. Go diagonal. Snug it a little bit each time. That one looks like it's down. That one's down. That one's down. That one's down. I'll go one more time, just to make sure. And we're good. The pump is back on again, without any hassle. Okay, let me wire things up a little bit here, and we'll take it from there. Oh, by the way, this PC build is going to take a significant amount of cable management. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to move that to a separate video, since only certain people might be interested in the details of that. It may actually be as long as the main body video itself, if not longer. So just to let you know, you'll see certain ones where I'll flag the next section being moved over to the secondary video, and then I'll continue with the stuff that is more related to probably why you're watching this video. So the two bottom fans of the cooler I will do first. This is the end that connects to the motherboard. This is if you want to extend it to another fan. And I will just pick one of these bottom fan connectors for it. I'll pick the furthest one. I'll put it in place. That. This connector here is the one that goes onto the cooler. You recall over on this side over here. So I will go ahead and run that up from the back up to here. Let's see where the main connection to the RGB is. Looks like it's probably this one right here. I have one here that's the actual fan for the top fan. The actual fan power, that is, the PWM. So for that one, I'm going to plug it in right over here on the motherboard. Because generally where the fan connectors are where you'd like to have the fan being controlled by, because there's a temperature sensor here somewhere. And I'll plug this one right into there. This is the RGB connector to the motherboard. So where's the nearest RGB? This is ARGB. There's two of them here. There's one over here too. So let me go over to this one here. So I'll plug this one into this RGB connector here, ARGB. Okay, the last two. Get these together here. And then I'll stuff all these wires into the back. All three of these fans, RGB and the pump, are coming from this one connector here. So there's no way that I'm going to have confusion in terms of this, which connectors I'm using. That's unused, that's unused. This one's unused in terms of ARGB. This is regular RGB. So I should be okay now, dressing up all those cables on the other side as needed. Now this is the USB 3. Just keep everything organized here. This is the audio, right? HD audio. So I'll put that through right now where it belongs, which is through this hole here. Not exactly sure where these other ones, all of these other ones will go through that same hole because they're all there at the bottom of the motherboard, which is on this side here. Push those through there. I won't tie wrap anything for now because I'm not sure what to tie wrap. And then this one, I'm not sure where the USB 3.0 is. There's one right here in the middle, and there's another one down at the bottom. I'll just put that one to the middle to make it a little bit cleaner. So I'll move this one. Which one is it? That's like the middle joint here. Push that through. And we can connect this one up to here. And I'll push the remaining cable back through to the back to keep it nice and neat. And then I got the HD audio. I got the front panel connectors. Let me get the HD audio one connected while I think about it, which I believe is this one here all the way at the end. All right, so that's the front panel, high definition audio. And then all of these, let me get them organized, have to come up and connect up to this header right here in the appropriate place. Okay, what I did is I located all of the front panel wires for the switches and lights. I bundled them together with one of the spare tie wraps that came with the case. And then I went and printed this out on my motherboard. Basically, it's oriented just like this, that little front panel thing. We've already got the speaker in place here, so it's really putting these other ones in. So I'll put this on the side here and I'll keep it handy as I plug these in. I find doing it this way makes it a lot easier. So I do a clip with Windows. I put it to a document and I expand it. Let's see what we do first. It's usually easier to get the back ones done first. So the back ones being the hard disk LED, the reset switch, and the power LED. They're all in that back row. So we'll start with the power LED. Now the power LED is weird. I see it the same way all the time. It's two separate wires. And one is labeled plus and one is labeled minus. Okay, so that's a plus one I have right there, and the next one is minus. So according to this, the minus goes the furthest away. So it's right across from the speaker. So it's this one right here, one that's hanging out back here. So in the diagram, it's this one right here. And then the positive, let me double check that that still says positive on it. It always helps to have an extra flashlight. Yeah, that's a positive. That goes 2 over from there. Now, if you get the LEDs wrong, no big deal. It just means that you will, they will not light. They won't burn out. Okay, the next two, you skip one, and then the next two after that is the reset. Now, there's no polarity to the reset. So we find the reset. There it is, that's the reset. And you just put it the next two. Then the next ones are the, what is this, a hard disk, but that has a plus and a minus. So we got to get that one right. The plus is furthest away. So in terms of the two that are here, this one to my right is the plus. So I put that one over there. And then we have the power switch. Now right across from the hard disk is another power LED. There's actually 2 places to connect it. So if we skip next to that, the next two, which is where I put the screwdriver to boot the thing, that is the power on switch. So we have all of those installed now. I'll leave the power cables in the back here, but I'll run the SATA data up to the front. So each one of these is for one of the trays, one of the hotspot trays up there. So I'll just run those through here. I'll leave these guys handy because I got to put the power supply in. I'll put these through here. I'll do another flipperoo. And we have the two coming up here like this, and I'll just connect them to the nearest SATA data. Looks like 2 and 3 are the nearest ones to it. So I'll just connect those up. Doesn't matter which one is which. Put one in there. Gotta get the key right on these things. And I'll put one in there. And then I'll push them back into the back. And we'll make it look all nice and pretty later. What I didn't connect is the pump power. It's a 3-pin. Yeah, here it is. It's over here. AIO pump. Pump that guy up. It's a 4 on the motherboard, but we only use 3. The fourth one will stay hanging. And I'll tie wrap that later. I think that's the lion's share of the wires that I have to connect. I can put the fans in. This will be exhausting, both of these. And these are coming in, which is good in a way, because I will have 3 pushing in, 2 pushing out. And that'll keep a positive pressure in here. But this is a 140, so maybe it doesn't even do any good to try to get another 120 in here, because that might make it negative pressure, or at least very close to negative pressure. What a negative pressure means is that there's more air being sucked out than blowing in, and that's not a good thing for a PC, because then it'll start sucking air in through all of these little holes all over the place, and that air is not filtered. So let me put the fans that I can on here next, and then we'll be able to put the power supply. I just want to do that so we have the little wires out of the way. So let me turn this around the other way so I can get to these 2 fans a little easier here. That way I can get to both of these fans here. Now I have a thin one here that I haven't tried yet. It's only, I think, 15 millimeters in diameter or thickness. Pretty good ratings on it, pretty good power performance numbers on it. Always try to use the screws that came with the fan. This one comes with longer screws and short screws. So I'll be using a short one. Once again, we want to be able to blow out, which means we're going to have to put the fan this way with the little grating pointed out. So the cables themselves, we'll have to unwind them, and we'll push them down into the bottom. So the wires will go down into the back, and back there I'll probably wind up feeding some of the wires back through again for the RGB and the fan positions. But for right now, we'll push them back there. Take the screws, be using the shorter screws. They are magnetic, that's good, and I'll put them in here. Try not to go too many times in and out with fan screws. They're self-threading, and eventually they'll wear out the plastic. So you should be a little bit careful with that. Do not over-tighten fan screws, because that'll make them vibrate more with the case. Okay, that's one. Let's see what we got. These are also ARGB. Hey, we'll try it. I'll put them in. We're going to be close to neutral though, so I'll have to test the airflow on the case itself with all these fans. I'll do that in the testing phase of this video, just to make sure we're not making negative pressure. I mean, equal pressure or close to it is pretty good, but not too negative. You don't want to do that. Again, make sure you get the direction right. I want it blowing out this way. And I want the cables connected down as low as possible. Maybe even this way if I can. Well, this should be good. So this will go in like this. And use the screws that came with it. I do want to put that cage back on. So let me put it up this way so we can see what I'm doing here. That's blowing out this way, so the cage is not as critical as it would have been if the open end was there, but still, you don't want people sticking their fingers in there. Push the cables back to the back. Okay, now here's the power supply that I originally wired up when we did the test build, right? All I had to do then was the 2 12 volt for the PSU, for the CPU, excuse me, and the main 24 pin for the motherboard. That's all I needed originally for the test that I did on the bench. Now I'm going to need, for the video card I'm putting in here for now, it's going to need 3 VGAs. This has 5 on it, so I'll put 3 VGA cables, and I will need 2 SATAs. Why 2? Because these SATA cables only have 3 connectors on them, unfortunately. And I have a total of 4 at least in this initial build, I have a total of 4 SATA devices that need to be plugged in, even though one is not going to be used initially. I want to make sure it's ready to go if needed, and that's the second hard drive bay. So I got the cables here. Let me start hooking them up. We start with a VGA one. There's 2 different types of VGA cables this came with. It really doesn't matter for purposes of this. This has a pigtail on it, right? And then I have another one that does not have a pigtail on it. It's a VGA with just straight through, no pigtail. So they give you 2 types with this particular power supply. So I will do it in the same order that I plan on plugging them in. So this one I'm going to plug in. This is the end that goes to the video card. But remember, I'm not going to be connecting these cables directly to the video card anyway. I have cable extensions, right, that I showed originally. So let's go ahead and plug these in, 3 of them. I'll put on one end here, I'll put one that has a pigtail. Then I will put one without a pigtail. As you can see, this one has a split to it. This one does not. So this one here without the split is what goes in here. Okay. Make sure it says VGA on there, which it does. And then I'll put another one with a pigtail at the end and as the third one. I won't use these 2 over here. Again, the end without the pigtail. Plug in there. This is the advantage of a fully modular. I get to leave off what I don't need. Now it's also got 4 SATAs, and it's got something called peripheral. The peripheral one actually connects up to a cable that is actually Molex, the old 4-pin connectors. I'm not going to be using that. So let me go ahead now and connect up the 2 for the SATAs. There's only one end that can be connected, and I'll connect them up, one over here, right, and one over here, just to keep these 2 empty. I won't plug into the peripheral one. I'll connect to this SATA one right here. So we had to add all of these extra cables to the power supply. Okay, actually this one too. A lot of extra cables, actually, what, 5 more compared to the original 3 that I had. So let me put these SATA cables over here out of the way. Now always make sure when you put this in this case, if you remember from the cover, which I have here, the air vent is here, which, by the way, I'm going to be putting a filter here on the outside, a magnetic filter. That's what I'll be doing. But that comes toward the end. But that'll go there, which means that the fan has to be connected or positioned up. So I'll put it in this way. A 2-compartment case like this, is interesting. This is my first one that I've actually had to use. And that puts it in place, and I have this whole conglomeration of cables then that I have to route and connect. But I'll put them off to the side for now. Make sure, important point, that you always use the screws that came with the power supply to connect it up. So this particular 1000 watt EVGA, the screws are located in here. And a little help there. Oh, that's not good. I dropped the screws all over the place. So 3 of the screws went all over the place. The bag was a little too tight. Still, no excuse. I should not have done it over the PC, right? I warned you earlier, but so with that, now I'm set to go. Make sure, by the way, the power supply is off. Right now I see it was left on from my previous testing. All done. The power supply has now been secured. So now I can go ahead and connect up, at least at this point, transfer the cables over to where they need to go. Now I could remove this cage to make it a little bit easier, but let me just double check where the connectors have to go. So I could go either through the middle or through the top in terms of these grommets thing. It looks like the top is still best. So let's see if I can get to that for this 24 volt. That's the one I want to do first. Have the extensions right here. Trying to make this a bit of a showpiece, even though it doesn't have a glass side to it, it still will be showable. And here are all the cables. I won't put the combs on right now. I'll save that for later, but let me take the cables out of here. As I said, nice gray and black ones that I need. Obviously, the 24 pin is going to be needed. And then I need the ones for the 12 volt for the power supply. This is a VGA one. Let's put that on the side. This one is also a VGA one. These are straight through, so there shouldn't be a problem with the connector itself. That's also VGA. This one is split 4 and 4, so that's the 12 volts for the CPU. This one is split 4 by 4, and that's another VGA. So I got 3 VGAs and I got 2 that are for the CPU. What I'll do is I'll only have to run one of these through because the other one I'll just hold back here. They don't separate at this end, which is understandable. But now you don't plug these in here because every power supply is different. We got to plug these in to the end of these cables here. So this one here is 8, no problem. We hook it up right into there. You see a little notch there? That's where that goes. And you get that in place like that. My main streaming system has extensions on it as well. There we are, that's together. Now this one is going to be tricky because there's 2 halves to it. So when I plug it in, I only plug 1 half in. I'm not going to plug both. So if I do this, I plug just that 1 half in. That means that this is the half that has to go through to the other side. So I'll push that through first. And then of course, the other one is easy. It's the entire thing. It's all both parts of it, right? Push both of those parts through. And then of course this one, I've got to reach back underneath here and get it through that little hole underneath the bay. Oh, I got to put the extension first. Don't mess up again. And this one, it's straight through until it snaps in place, and then I want to scoot this thing through to the other side. So this time I'll start with this one. The grommet popped out of the... Tries to not be too harsh on the cables. And now this one, it has the actual clip here on this side, so I want to take this and just sort of bend it like this. I want to support the motherboard from the bottom as I put this one in because there are no screws right at the very edge of this motherboard, right? So there we go. And I'll be putting combs here to make it look a little bit neater in a little while. And then I'll put these two. These two have to snip together. So I'll push these together through here. Now I got them together. That was a little bit of a trick. So I can put them both in here. Let's get the fan cables out of the way. I'll put the fan cables down this time to the other side. And this last one by itself. There we go. I got all 4 of those in there. I can push those into the back. Well, I just found out I have to switch out the graphics card. The Rogue Strix 3070 Ti will not fit. So I'll put this EVGA 3080, my first 3080 that I bought. But as you can see, this one makes it. The other one would have gone well past this fan over here on the radiator. So the first thing I'll have to do is take off a couple of these. I think it's probably this one here and this one next to it. I guess I'll never be able to get my 3090 in here unless I switch cases. And this should just go right down in place. There we go, it's in. Put these 2 screws back in to hold it in place. Okay, the graphics card is in. So now I have the 2 cables coming up through here. Each one is 8, and these 2 have to go together. And then they'll tuck right in like this. And these 2 will be the same deal, connect up together, and then they will connect up to this. And we are in. Okay, let's power it on and see what we get. Turn the power supply on and hit the button. And there we go. Let's see if the screen comes up. I see something on the screen coming up, and there it is. Windows in the background is on. Okay, so we're looking good. The colors are taking over to what they were set to on the PC, and it looks great.